But want to thank everyone today for joining us, whether you're live or watching this after the fact, to dive into the idea of working with LeaderGuide Pro, really as it comes time to managing time, keeping track of time, and how you would do that in a facilitator guide. We've got several different areas that we're going to cover today, and just to quickly look at it, all told, there's 7 items we're going to be looking at. They basically build off of each other, but we're going to be looking at where all the time markers fall within LeaderGuide Pro, and then we'll break it down. And we're going to start at the bottom of at the bottom of our outline or our hierarchy and work our way up. Because in reality, that's probably the best way to work with time in LeaderGuide Pro. So we're going to start looking at it at the content block level, then we'll look at it at the lesson level, up to the module level, and then how it all pulls together in the training at a glance. We'll look at if you ever want to start building out agendas based off your time markers in LeaderGuide Pro, how to do that, and then how we can capture time when we start building out a guidebook, when we're in the guidebook design template. So at any point during this session, feel free to ask any questions, speak up or put them into chats, and we will be happy to go through and cover them as they come up. So we'll jump in, and the first item that we're going to be looking at is the idea of time markers in LeaderGuide Pro. So where do we see them? What do they look like? So let's jump in. I've got a LeaderGuide Pro document open, but when it comes to LeaderGuide Pro and time, there's a couple places that we're going to basically where the program keeps it. The first one is when we're on the program and perspective page. So one of those sections of the upfront material of your collection. If you haven't customized this out or taken this section out, there is a program timing section. And so this is where, as we've gone in and put in time markers in all the other locations that we're going to look at here in a few moments, when we tally these all up, it will eventually bring it all right up here into the program timing. So you don't have to go in and manually put in timing at the program level. LeaderGuide Pro, with a click of a mouse, will do that for us. If I scroll down, other places where we're going to see time, when we get to the training at a glance page, which, like we talked about just a few moments ago, this is going to be an area that we're going to dive into deeper. But this is where we can go in and we can see what's happening in terms of timing right there on the page. If I come down further in the documents, on the module pages, this is where we're going to be able to come in and what's the specific timing for the module itself. This page here will end up with, I'm just trying to find my cursor, so bear with me. All right. The time to complete, 0 hours, 15 minutes, where we see one lesson. LeaderGuide Pro will capture in timing there based off of if we've put stuff in at the lesson level, it carries it up to the module level, from the module level up to the program timing level. And then the two other places, at the lesson level, you can have a lesson time block, which we'll see right now. It's got the clock. You'll see cumulative time. We're going to talk about that when we talk about lessons, but we can capture time at the lesson level. And then if you wanted to, I'm going to scroll down just because I've got an example for it. On the activity or at the content block level, we can capture text, or we can capture time directly underneath the icon for that specific type of content block where you want to capture that. So those are all the different time markers that we have for LeaderGuide Pro. Any questions on those at the moment?
I'll just ask Pat about the time, and you're probably going into this at some point, but the time, the ones that you put in, like just how much time for that activity, or maybe I use it for videos. how that adds into the full lesson time, and can it mess it up, so to
Gotcha.
speak.
Yep. But yes, so if we were to go in and put time in here,
Right.
yep. Yeah, we'll talk about that actually in the next section. So
Perfect.
it's an awesome transition.
Thanks. You're welcome.
So let's go in and we'll look at that. So we're gonna pop over and we're gonna now look at the idea of setting up timing in our content blocks. How do we handle those type of things? And so if we'll come back, we'll look at the full version of Word here. So basically we have the ability to put time in as at a content block level. The way this works is when we have a content block, right? So let's say I went in and I put in, an activity content block, right? And whatever my activity is, right? We've got our instructions for activity, but you want to say, like, we're going to spend 5 minutes doing this, or we're going to spend 10 minutes doing this. Where we put this into place is on the IQs panel of LeaderGuide Pro. So by default in version 16, it will automatically open unless you set a preference for it to not. So that's this task pane over on the right-hand side. Right, it's this item here. If you don't have it open, let's say we don't have that open, where we open it, it's in the insert section of the ribbon. All right, so in the insert section of the ribbon, it's the bottom item. It's the bottom choice. It's that little purple, it says IQs on it. So if we click on this, this will launch that IQs panel. But so for where we want to put in our time marker, all we need to do, put your cursor in column 2 or column 3 of the content block you want to have time in. And then we're going to come up in the top section of this IQs panel. There's a box that says minutes with a clock next to it. You're just going to go type in the amount of time. So let's say we're going to spend 5 minutes on this activity. Type in 5, click on the clock. Right. There was just an error message. It's because my cursor wasn't in the cell block in column 2 or column 3. So just make sure your cursor's where you need it to be. Put in your time, click on the clock, and it will now add in underneath the icon in column 1 that time marker. So if we go through and you put in a series of these time markers in content blocks, when we go in and tally up all our time markers, these can be added up into our lesson time. And this goes to your question, Julie. So when we're looking at lesson time, and so we're going to kind of transition a little bit into what our next topic is, but in terms of lesson timing, right? So like in this case, this lesson has already been set for 30 minutes. So if I was to tally up my time markers, and the way I do that, if I go in and I click on the update all fields button, the tag button. So the control section, top section, far left-hand button, it says tag. If I click on that, it will give me it will tally up all my time markers throughout the document. It starts at the content block level, and it will tally all my content blocks times together. If that number of my content blocks is greater than the time in my lesson block, it will change that number. Right? So if I had, and we'll demonstrate this here in just a moment, a content block with 15 minutes, I had one with 22 minutes and one with 7 minutes, it would tally all those numbers up, and if that number was bigger than my time block, the time in my lesson, it would change that number over. In our situation right here, where my time is 5 minutes in this activity, but my overall lesson time is 30 minutes, it's not going to change it. So it's basically, it's like an if-then statement. If all my times at the content block level are greater than my lesson time, it changes out the lesson time to that, to the total time of my content blocks. If it is not greater than, it just leaves your lesson time alone. So it's not, you definitely still need to pay attention to your timing, right? This is why we want to make sure we're auditing documents and or auditing our programs to make sure things stay on track or they're captured correctly. But if you were to go through, and let's do it here. On this lesson, I'm going to, at the moment, let's change this. Let's say this was, my time on my lesson was 5 minutes. And we'll put in a couple content blocks. So let's say we put in a knowledge check and, I don't know, a key point. But I'm just going to put some times in on these. So let's say on this knowledge check, we're going to spend 10 minutes. And on the key points, I'm going to spend 8 minutes. All right, so currently, when we look at this, my time in my lesson for debrief is I've said it's 5 minutes. But my time in the lesson itself, I have a content block for 10 minutes. I've got one for 8 minutes. So I already know 18 minutes is greater than 5. As bad as I am at math, I know that's to be true. So if I go up, and again, I click the tag button, short for training at a glance, and we're going to talk more about these, exactly what it does when we get to the training at a glance section. But when I click on this, one of the items that it does as it goes through this is that it tallies up all our time markers. It rebuilds out our training at a glance. But I can now, I'm just going to scroll back down through my document to get to that debrief lesson. If we look at the timing at this point, notice we're at 18 minutes, where it previously was at 5. If I scroll up on the one that had been at 30 minutes, where our lesson was at, our content block time was at 5 minutes, it didn't change. So you just want to make sure you're kind of keeping that in mind. In an ideal world, my opinion is that we go through and we actually spend, if we're doing virtual instructor-led training, that we're going to go through and you'll actually spend, I like to put into every single content block, I like to put in a time. So if I've got a say block, we're going to spend a minute doing that, or 2 minutes doing that. And then we're going to do a poll, and that's 3 minutes, and we're going to do this. And I break it down at each content block level, because generally in virtual training, we've got 45 minutes, we got 90 minutes, right? You have a very defined time period that's going on. And you're really in an enclosed, for lack of a better term, an enclosed learning arena. So we want to make sure we're staying on track. So I, for lack of a better term, like to micromanage my time to the content block level. Now in instructor-led training, I really like to say my overall lesson time is 30 minutes. But I will spend, of that, on the items that I tend to get off track on, or people tend to get off track on. Activities, role plays, Q&A sessions. I'll put in a time marker on those content blocks. So it's 30 minutes for the overall lesson, but that activity, don't spend anything more than 10 minutes. So I put the time marker in there. And then basically in that situation, if I've got 20 minutes, or it's a 30-minute lesson and definitively 10 minutes for the activity, I've got 20 minutes to get through everything else. Again, that's how I like to do it. If you want to break it down completely on each one of those yourselves, go for it. my recommendation is I would not just say we've got 30 minutes or we've got an hour in a lesson and just let it happen, because time's going to get used inefficiently in places where it shouldn't be in general. Questions about the content block side of it?
I'll just say thank you. I that's how it was the first time I learned about it, and I just wanted to make sure nothing had changed. So
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So now let's talk about time and lessons. All right. And we've kind of, content blocks and lessons, they're kind of intermingled already. But there's a few things just like to point out about the lesson time blocks themselves. So if we come back, and here, we'll go to this view. When we are looking at the lesson time block, and I have it in LeaderGuide Pro, currently have it turned on, that it's whenever a new lesson comes in, it automatically turns on, a lesson time block is put in for me. That's a preference, and I'll show you in a few moments how we can set that if you don't want that to happen, or you only want to have it happen in facilitator guides, or you want to have it happen in all type of guidebooks. I'll show you how to do that. But when these come in, there's two pieces to it. The first piece is this top line, the cumulative time, and then there's the time to complete this lesson. On the time to complete this lesson, the only piece, if you were going to manually put time in yourself, is the blue number. Or depending, it's either a blue number or it'd be 3 blue hashtags or number signs. But if I want to, change this up myself, I just need to highlight that, and I can type in the amount of time that I wanted to spend in this lesson. Now, cumulative time, the program will tally it for us. It's another feature of that tag button. But cumulative time is where we currently are in our training program. So this is the first lesson in this facilitator guide. So lesson 1, cumulative time, is always going to be 0 hours, 0 minutes. So if the training starts at 8 a.m., we're at 0 hours, 0 minutes. When we go to our next lesson, now I had updated that. It was at 15 before I changed it to 50. But now notice that the next lesson is showing cumulative time of 15 minutes. So it's a nice way for your facilitators to, at a glance, be able to look down and, are we on track? Are we trending in the right way for time? Right? So if it was starting at 8 a.m., well, at 8:15, we should be in this case, the present lesson. If we're at 8:20, we're 8:25, we've already got off track, and we need to make, one, catch back up, but make sure that we're really hitting our time markers in the document. Now, because I just made that change, right, I changed it from 15 to 50, again, if I click that tag button, so up in the controls section, top left-hand choice, when I click on tag, it rebuilds everything, it tallies up all those time markers again. Right, and I'll just quickly jump back over here. So that present cumulative time is now at 50 minutes because of what the time is above us. So cumulative time is just how far along we are into the program. You update the timing and the lesson level at the blue, either the blue numbers or the blue hashtags. Now, how do we set it up if we wanted to always have we always want to have a lesson time block come in, or we don't want to have it come in, or we just want it to be coming in for facilitator guides but not participant guides? This can be set on the part section. So in the insert section of the ribbon, this is where we would go in. All right, so I'm sorry, in the customize section. So customize, drop this down. We're going to come over and we're going to choose the second choice, which is LeaderGuide Pro preferences. And on this preferences panel, on the left-hand side, there is the third choice down is automatically insert lesson time block. And notice I have a check mark next to it. And there's also a choice, kind of a sub-choice of that, facilitator guide only. So I have that marked, which means when I choose to build a facilitator guide, whenever a lesson goes in, it's going to automatically give me a lesson time block. But if I choose to build a participant guide, the lesson time block doesn't automatically come in. If I wanted to also come in with the facilitator or with the participant guide, I can just uncheck facilitator guide only. If I didn't want them to automatically come in completely, just make sure uncheck automatically insert lesson time block. And then when you are, when you have it set the way you want it, you can click OK, which will save your choices, and then you can click the close button. But that's how you manipulate that time content block, whether it comes in when we insert a lesson or not. All right, questions about timing and lessons? All right, well then let's talk about timing and modules. So again, as you've seen, we kind of been working from the bottom up because that's also how LeaderGuide Pro tallies time. It starts at the lowest level, right? You'll start tallying stuff from our content blocks, bring it from content blocks up to lessons, from lessons up to our modules, and then from modules it goes up into the training at a glance, as well as that program, that program timing that's on the program in perspective page. But we're going to come back over into Word and let's look at a module page. So module timing, ideally, you don't do anything with it, right? We've already kind of said best practice is to be putting, at minimum, capturing time at the lesson level, but really the lesson level plus at least sometimes in content blocks for the things we get off track, or we're completely putting items into timing in our content blocks, having it automatically add up to our lessons, and then the lessons will funnel into our module times. So if you put time in at the lesson level, at least, the program itself will just fill out our module time for us. You don't have to do anything for it. I don't recommend it, but if for whatever reason you did just want to have time at the lesson, you didn't want to put time in at the lesson level, and again, I'm going to stress that it's a way to make sure your program never runs on time to do that. But for whatever reason, if that's what you wanted to do, you could come in and just type in, in the blue, how many hours, how many minutes, and you're going to keep it that way. I will point out at any of these, at the lesson level, at the content block level, at the module level, the lowest denominator is 1 minute, right? So you can't say this is going to take 30 seconds. So when we're putting in time, minimum of 1 minute. But for modules, we would just type in those times. If you weren't doing it at the other level. But again, if we made a change, so let's say we're going to spend 60 minutes at our lesson, just so you can see how this works. This is currently at 1:33. When I click tag, it will come through. I'm going to jump back to this, and you'll see, because I had increased that by from 45 minutes to an hour, it's now made this an hour and 48 minutes instead of an hour and 33 minutes. So modules, for the most part, take care of themselves just by clicking the tag button. So best practice, again, put your time in at the lesson level and at least put in some content block levels for the ones you get off track of, or completely do it at the content block level and let the program build it out for us. All right, so those are all the places where we can go and kind of manually add in times for it. So this all, like I said, it's all kind of adding all up. And it's going to bring us all up to what we call the training at a glance. And so as we'd gone through this document and we've been clicking on items, I've been saying click on the tag button, right, which was up here in the control section of the ribbon, top left-hand choice. Tag, short for training at a glance. It is also a page in our facilitator guide, unless you've purposely chosen not to build one, which is a choice when you're starting to build a guidebook. But on our navigation pane, which is available right from, unless you've purposely changed it, it will automatically open up when you open up LeaderGuide Pro version 16. You can click on the tag button here. If I click on this, it will jump me directly to that page. You can also get to the training at a glance in the controls section by go to, and then choose training at a glance. The navigation pane and the go to they both do the same items. They just, one is is constantly there. The other one's a drop down. But the training at a glance, this is a page where it's basically giving us a high-level scope of what's happening in our training program based off all our modules. So when we generate out the training at a glance by clicking that tag button, each time we click it, it rebuilds this page. It pulls in from our module pages, it pulls in our timing, it pulls in the name of our modules, and it pulls in the short description, which is really from our module page. It's this overview section here. This is what becomes our description. So the three fields of our training at a glance are built from the name of the module, the timing on the module page, and then the overview section is what builds out our training at a glance. So what the nice part on this is it gives us, again, a high-level scope of what's happening at really the terminal objective level of our training program. Reason I bring this up, one is when we click the training at a glance, this gets built out. It's going to help at high-level scope, but it also is the feeder for the next feature I want to make sure you're taking advantage of with LeaderGuide Pro, which is, amazingly enough, creating agendas. So for the agenda feature need to work, you have to have a training at a glance, and you need to have timing at every lesson in your document. So with those two things made sure of, we have the ability to go through and generate out agendas. And how this works, we're going to be in the control section of the ribbon. So we're going to be in the control section, and we're going to choose the extract feature. So if we extract, when we mark this down, we've got a dialog box. This is where we can go from one type of guidebook to another, right? From a facilitator guide to a participant guide. We can go from, we want to extract out assessments, case studies, or handouts as, the content blocks that are currently in a facilitator guide, and you want to make, standalone documents outside of, let's say, maybe a participant guide. But the third choice down is you can do an agenda or, basically a time calculator or an audit document right from this third option. So when we choose this agenda or time calculator, we get a dialog box that just says, first we must make sure modules and lesson timing are updated. By clicking OK, all the program's doing is it's running that tag button one last time. It's tallying up all our time markers. And here, what's going to end up happening, and I'm hoping this works. Yep. So we get a dialog box that is basically, on the left-hand side, we're kind of put in some information to help narrow down what we're specifically going to be building our agenda around. And over on this right-hand side, we've got basically the hierarchy of our program. So first level is the name of our program, and in parentheses, it shows us the overall timing for our program. But if I click the little green plus next to it, it breaks it down. So within our program, here are our 3 modules and the names of the modules with their timing next to it. And if we click the plus next to that, it breaks out into the lessons that are in here. And notice there's a checkbox next to each one of these names. This gives us the ability that maybe, on this one, on the course that we're going to be running, we're not running this 3rd lesson. I can uncheck it so it's not it's not factored in when the agenda is created. But that's kind of how we're manipulating the modules and lessons within the program we're going to build the agenda for. If you want to use a course, if your document was built out with a course ID, your facilitator guide, that would already be built in here, or you could put in your own. And maybe you're giving it a different, especially with agendas, seeing that the underlying course, let's say as a course ID, I like to put some other descriptor next to it so I can, this is the second session, or it's the date, or the date and the location, so I can keep track, because we're not necessarily always running our course at the exact same time. And this is one of the best parts about LeaderGuide Pro. When we're capturing time, it should be the time for how long does it take to teach something versus this lesson is running from 8 a.m. to 9:15, right? Let's say if it's an hour and 15 minutes, we say it's an hour and 15 minutes because today or the next time it's taught, maybe it's going to be from 8 to 9:15. But when it's taught 2 months from now, we're starting training at 10 a.m. So those timings don't mark. So we mark your time, how long it takes, and then we use the agenda here to go in and say, right, what time is our training starting? What time is it stopping? How many days is it going over? But I could come in and let's just say, for example, our training is going to today start at 9:30. And I could come in and, you could put in an end time. I know our course is less than 3 hours, so I don't necessarily have to put in an end time, but I could change up my end time. I could say however many days it's running across, right? So if it's going across multiple days, I can do that. But once you have everything set the way you want it in terms of your start, your end time, and how many days, you would just click refresh to kind of lock that in. And then we can just click the draft agenda button. And what will end up happening, you'll see action completed successfully down here at the bottom. Right, just so you can see it. Action completed successfully. And so I can close this out, and what I will find down in my my Windows tray, I put it on my other monitor, so let me bring that over. I get a quick agenda based off the timing that we had put in, right? Name of the program, our course ID is up in here. What day, in our case it's day 1, start time, end time, how much time is going to be going on. So with a click of a mouse, I can draft out an agenda for my training based off all the time markers I put into LeaderGuide Pro. Now you can go and you can make this, pretty it up however you want it to be, cut and paste it, put in your email, drop it in the the upfront portion of, or it's a separate handout to go along with your workbooks, whatever that is. But you're able to quickly generate this, and you're not sitting there spending all this time flipping through, figuring out your time markers, writing it down, and then trying to run this through. Right? If you put breaks into your LeaderGuide Pro documents, those can all be factored into here as well. So you can dial it in, and with a click of a mouse, generate out an agenda to then make sure everyone knows where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be, and how long they're supposed to spend doing it. Who's got questions on the creating agendas, items like that?
So I just have one /challenge, and that is I would love it if it ever became possible to, along with start time, end time, to put like AM break, lunch, PM break, like in at that level instead of having to put them in as lessons. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at that. But we tried putting them in as lessons, and unfortunately, because our folks who offer the courses do it differently everywhere, like some people might take a longer lunch or a shorter lunch, and might take their break earlier or later. It would just be nice to put in breaks in a lunch, but not actually have it in the faculty guide or participant guide, but just have it as something I can add to the agenda at the time I'm creating the agenda.
All right. We can look at it. At the moment, I don't know how that would happen, but hey,
Yeah.
always up for a new mental challenge, right?
New challenge for
Yep,
you, Pat.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so let's talk about the last item today, which is one of the new features in LeaderGuide Pro. It's the Guidebook design template. And this comes up, and again, we're looking at in terms of timing, but we'll look at when you're building out when you first go to build out a guidebook, can we capture in timing at the time of creation if you already have a general idea how long you want to spend? And the answer is yes, and let's look at how we can do that in the Guidebook design template. All right, so we are going to, I can close this one out because we don't need it. All right, so if I was to create a new document, right, so on the LeaderGuide Pro ribbon, just as a quick reminder, in the Start section, we're going to click on the button for Start a New Document, which gives us this dialog box on, filling out, where we can go in and we can fill out information about our course. What's the name of the program, course ID if we're doing something like that. Facilitator guide, participant guide, right? This is where we're making all our choices. Right, and so the program starts building everything out, right? Just like you would normally see in LeaderGuide Pro. All right, we're going to get prompted to save here in a moment. And for those who haven't really started using version 16 or haven't used it a lot, one of the newest things that we put in, like I said before, is this guidebook design template. And the idea is that we want, whether you're bringing in slides or not, we wanted to give you the ability to put in your course structure at the time of document creation. Just working over the years with multiple people, multiple organizations, we found one of the biggest struggles people have is kind of setting a course structure. So on the left-hand side of this dialog box, right, we've gone in and we've given you some predefined structures, right? Like you're doing that, a shorter course, 60 to 90 minutes with a single objective, right? A single module with a series of lessons in it. This is a pretty good structure. We've also gone in and we've put in some time markers. So the big difference between this, let's say version 2.0 of the Guidebook design template that came out in the most recent release of LeaderGuide Pro is it's now a single table. So it makes it easy for you to manipulate everything. But you can now come in and you're able to, right, put in the names of what's our module, right? I could change over the names of our lessons right within this table within the Guidebook design template. If there was a new, let's say I needed another lesson, right? Let's say I can go in, I can click insert, which would give me space, and I could come in and type in the name of it. But where we're looking really in terms of time today, notice there's a time column. At the Guidebook design template, time is always put at the lesson level. Right? If you were to type into the gray box next to the module timing, or next to module, you could type in there, it's not carrying over, and that's why it's grayed out. But if you just go in and type in the amount of time you wanted to spend on something, it will go, it basically captures that. And when we click OK, and it starts building out our document, it will not only put in all the modules and lesson pages based off the structure we set up in the guidebook design template, but at that lesson time block, as long as you have it turned on, so it only works if you have the lesson time block enabled under preferences. But let's jump down. Let's go to our training at a glance real quick. Right, it's already showing an hour and 35 minutes. Right, so I chose the single module level. Right, so our module timing is the same. But notice it already filled in 30 minutes for creating course structure. Right, and debrief is 10 minutes. And lesson 4 is 5 minutes. So, and 10 minutes in summary. So all of those time markers were automatically put in. So when you build out your objectives and kind of set out your kind of course structure, if you have a general idea of your timing, drop them in there, right? And now later on, if we start putting in other content blocks, right? Oh, in this summary, we actually have an activity, right? And I know that the activity is going to we're spending 15 minutes in this, and right, and I add that timing in. Later on, when I generate out my document by clicking the tag or tally up all my time markers, clicking on the tag button, it will make those adjustments. And so it's giving you that the guidebook design template, and we'll come back to it just so you can see it. Right, this is just giving us the little view, a way to capture our time as we're putting these items in. So it's just that much easier, or you're that much further down the road when you build out your documents. Obviously, we still want to be doing audits and things like that to make sure this should take 30 minutes, but we've audited it twice and it's been taking 45 minutes. Are we getting hung up in a place where we shouldn't? Did we not allocate enough time? Whatever those things are. But first, you got to capture what you think it should be so that we can make sure that we're either hitting that or we need to make adjustments. Or maybe we need to break the training up into, this needs to be two different things because all of this is important. We just can't cover what we need to in the allotted amount of time we kind of set aside. But those are the main items about basically capturing time, working with time in LeaderGuide Pro. What questions at this stage? So thank you for coming today. Any questions, please reach out. We're happy to help.
Will do.
All right. Take care.
Bye.